fulfill the mutual responsibilities of nations as set forth in the Charter, to bring about free world trade and the full employment of man's productive resources, men and women of goodwill everywhere must come to know and understand one another.
Feels like back in fourth grade when they made you watch a movie? United Nations propaganda film.
In this charter, humanity has declared its united purpose to work towards those economic goals.
Yeah, it didn't really work out, did it? The United Nations, wow, a globalist, anti-American, anti-Israel, totally corrupt institution that right now is encouraging the chaos at the border. You know these people, the UN Secretary General came out against Title 42. The United Nations, thoroughly wrong and thoroughly good at propaganda. I remember as a kid going to the United Nations. It was a big deal to see the United Nations. We all went there and we saw the exhibits and they said, wouldn't it be great if the United Nations were in charge of everything? And when you're a child, that is, well, it leaves a mark. I carried around that fantasy for way too long, actually well into adulthood. And then you realize what a corrupt organization it is. And even their seemingly nice ideals are actually quite dangerous. Now, in the sculpture garden at the United Nations, they have this, the twisted gun. And it is to, a symbol of ending all warfare. And isn't that a great thing? And it would be wonderful if there were no warfare and if nobody needed guns, but we do. And look at that twist at the end. It would take a very powerful person or machine to twist that gun, right? I mean, it would take force to render that gun inoperative. Whose force? The governments, the states. The ideal is beautiful, right out of the Bible. Isaiah, I believe. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. But that's on Judgment Day, and we're not there yet. This inscription you can find at the United Nations. That twisted gun, I used to find it beautiful. Now it creeps me out. It represents unchecked government power, unchecked global government power. And I don't like that. And I don't like what's happening at the border. And I think the UN should have stayed the hell out of it. And speaking, the UN, don't forget, gave us the World Health Organization, the WHO. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? What could be wrong with World Health? Well, what's the World Health Organization? A lot. Corrupt, and they covered for President Xi and the Chinese and the Wuhan lab, all the stuff they did. Hey, this coming week is the G7 in Japan. President Biden is going there. Will he try to invite or maybe stop by China on the way back home? Remember how tight he was supposed to be with China. Remember that, right?
The president still wants to keep those lines of communication open.
We maintain that we're going to have another discussion with President Xi. The president wants to do that, wants to keep those lines open.
We certainly like to get him over to Beijing to open up some more of those lines of communication.
Wait, I thought they were supposed to be really tight. Now they're just saying basically we're keeping the phones on the hook, okay? In case it rings, we'll be ready on either side. It wasn't supposed to be like this with Joe and the Chinese, remember?
I've spent more time with Xi Jinping, at least before we got out, than any world leader has.
I probably spent more time with Xi Jinping, I'm told, than any world leader has, because I had 24, 25 hours of private meetings with him when I was vice president, traveled 17,000 miles with him.
I've spoken and spent more time with Xi Jinping than any other world leader has.
You know he's just talking to potential customers.
Hours of meetings and personal conversations with Xi Jinping.
Nobody is impressed by that. We expect presidential leaders to know each other. He was very bizarrely boastful about his connection to President Xi. Apparently it did him good. It did Hunter some good. Maybe his brother, maybe Valerie, maybe Haley. But it's not doing the American people any good at all. I do believe he's compromised by China. They've got something on him. It explains his very aberrant behavior, doesn't it? And who would we prefer in power right now? Just let's compare and contrast two leaders and their approach to China.
I have many people from China that I do business with. They laugh at us. They feel we're fools. You know, they're getting away with absolute murder.
China's a great nation, and we should hope for the continued expansion.
tough
I don't want to
approach.
lose $300 billion a year to China when we can't afford to build schools for our children, when we can't afford to build highways, when we can't afford to build railways, when we can't afford to build bridges. I want money to be invested in jobs and in this country. I don't want to rebuild China.
A rising China is a positive development, not only for China, but for America and the world writ large.
It was China's fault, and China's going to pay a big price what they've done to this country. China's going to pay a big price what they've done to the world. This was China's fault, and just remember that.
554,064 American dead from COVID-19. A lot of families want to know how this happened, how it got here. Have you had a chance to speak to any of your international partners, any of President Xi, who I know you go way back with? Have you had a chance to ask him if these reports are true, that China maybe misled the world at the beginning?
No, I have not had that conversation with President Xi. Thank you.
So the choice is clear. Who do you think China prefers in the White House for the next 6 years? They are so rooting for Biden. And as far as foreign countries picking our presidents, they always have their preferences. But one thing I know, the Russia stuff was a total sham. And you know who was right.
Ultimately, I'm always right.
So the Durham Report. It's a big deal, kind of. It's the only report we got. We should have had it 3 years ago. I'm very suspicious. I think the swamp slow walked this thing on purpose. I think Durham, quite frankly, is pussyfooting around, right? I think I can say that. Being very, very delicate when he doesn't have to be. This is, look, there's some stuff in here, and we just can't blame the mainstream media for not covering it, okay? Conservative media, you got to tackle this stuff before you criticize the liberal media for ignoring it. Now, it's 300 plus pages long. It's like, quite frankly, reading a telephone book of a mid-sized city. Remember those telephone books? It's about, I mean, your eyes, you gotta, they wrote it boring on purpose, okay? They did. Bill Barr, I don't think he wanted this thing to be exciting. I think they wanted to slow walk it. You know how he feels about President Trump. They sabotaged his presidency. He knew it every step of the way. Why would it have taken so long for this report? 4 years? And they were really only evaluating a couple of months of activity. So the report is tough to read. I do believe on purpose. James Madison, one of our great founding fathers, put it this way. It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice, if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. Now, I know this is not a law, it is a report, but it is quite voluminous, almost like they don't want it read, and at times it is borderline incoherent, like they're trying to water down the impact of what should be a totally sensational, game-changing moment. But the bureaucracy is still working against Trump and still protecting the bureaucracy, the swamp. Now, a couple of basics before we tackle this thing, because I'm about a third of the way through it. It is definitely tough to get through, but here's how the FBI functions, all right? The FBI, remember, they got a lot of people, they've got a lot of guns, and they've got a lot of rules, regulations, laws that they are supposed to follow. And in this case, they blew off a lot of the rules. Definitely, I believe a lot of the laws, but they have procedure, they have standard operating procedure, and they blew it all off to get Trump. Absolutely, and to protect Hillary Clinton. This goes back to Operation Crossfire in 2016. You know how it started? It's really absurd. But a guy named George Papadopoulos, who I've met a couple of times, nice guy, very good at foreign policy, was volunteering for the Trump campaign. He worked at a think tank. He was having drinks at a bar in London with some guy he thought was a pal, happened to be from Australia. And he was saying something about, yeah, we might be, who knows, intel from Russia. We may be hearing stuff from Russia. It was in a bar. It was loud. Maybe the Australian guy misheard what he was saying. It doesn't matter. Just some guy speaking to some other guy in a bar should not trigger an FBI investigation, a full FBI investigation. But it did. But it did. Let's go to the report. You got to go through it. A31. The information from Papadopoulos was clearly raw and unevaluated. The FBI opened a full investigation before any preliminary discussions or interviews were undertaken. It was McCabe who directed that the Crossfire Hurricane investigation be opened immediately. The FBI executives were unanimous in supporting the opening of the investigation, and there is no indication that these discussions contemplated anything short of an immediate full investigation. All right, so many words, but here's the thing, and it's camouflaged in this report, but you can ultimately find it. A full investigation in the FBI is a big deal. There are lots of things they're supposed to do first, a lot. They have a whole sequence of events that they blew off because they wanted to get Trump. First, there's the pre-assessment phase of an investigation. It's a formal phase, it's in writing. And then they move on to the assessment. And then they move on to the preliminary investigation. And then finally, a full investigation. They skipped steps 1, 2, 3 to get right to 4 based on some bar talk in London that was unverified, unevaluated, and unscrutinized. And by the way, when you hear something like, hey, maybe they're working with the Russians, you check your own files first. And the FBI, they got a lot of files, and they had nothing linking Trump to Russia before some guy said the word Russia and Trump in the same sentence in some bar in London. It's kind of incredible and also kind of scary. So at a later point in time, oh, all right, what is this? This is a conversation between two agents, all right? They're in the middle of a full investigation, and they're looking at how little they have to work with. One guy is appalled, all right? Agent number 1, dude, are we telling them, the British intelligence services, everything we know? Or is there more to this? That's all we have. Not holding anything back. Damn, that's thin. I know. It sucks. It's a bad case. It was a bad case. It is a bad case. But they use this silly conversation in a London bar to put wiretaps on operatives, campaign workers for Trump. And listen to this. During the prior 6 weeks, the team had used CHS's confidential human sources to conduct operations against Page, Papadopoulos, and a high-level Trump campaign official, although those operations had not resulted in the collection of any inculpatory information. Now, I've heard of exculpatory information. I have never heard that word used, inculpatory. I know what it means. I mean, anything that makes them look guilty, potentially so. But they use that word, inculpatory, which I have never heard before. I know I'm not alone. I've never even read that word before. Why are they using this bureaucratic language, huh? They're watering it down. They're lessening the impact, and they're doing it on purpose. That's on you, Durham, and maybe Bill Barr. It's strange, isn't it? Keep going, though. There is some stuff in here. The intelligence analysts selected for Crossfire Hurricane were uniformly inexperienced. How about that? Also, the analysts done in Crossfire Hurricane was also limited by the Counterintelligence Division's failure to integrate the Directorate of Intelligence into the investigation as required by policy. Remember I was talking about those rules before? They blew them off. That is bureaucratic, but that is wrong. And it was a way to stick it to Trump and also to get the experts out of the way. They would know that the Steele dossier is phony, that this guy Steele created a crock of junk, all right? And they could not have the real experts inside the FBI onto any of that. Whew. So Hillary Clinton comes up in the Durham Report. Now, Hillary, as you know, she and Bill, lots of people all over the world have inculpatory information about those characters. And guess what? They're calling the FBI all the time with real tips, with real juicy scoops. But the FBI, oh, no. We have to have a preliminary assessment, then we have to have an assessment, and then we have to have a deputy. They went through the procedures and they slow-walked it. They slow-walked this report. They slow-walked anything concerning Hillary Clinton. Let's go. The The application for an investigation lingered because everyone was super more careful and scared with the big name Clinton involved. They were pretty tippy-toeing around HRC because there was a chance she would be the next president. Certain critical activity in the investigation was delayed for months due to, among other things, concerns that a politician Clinton was involved and that the investigation might interfere with a presumed future presidential campaign. Now, here, check this out. How these observations can be reconciled is unclear. You think so, John? I can see it from here. Why are you so reluctant? It's unclear. It's hideous and total bias and corruption. One more. The speed with which, this is a lot of words, but stay with me here. The speed with which surveillance of a U.S. person associated with Trump's campaign was authorized in the face of the unverified Steele reports and in the absence of a defensive briefing provided to then-candidate Trump are difficult to explain. All right, so look, if they really thought the Russians were knocking down the door at Trump headquarters, they would have gone to Trump and said, hey, you got to be wary of this. But they didn't want to tip him off that they were tiptoeing around looking for stuff. A defensive briefing is what they gave Hillary every step of the way. Ooh, this could be happening to you, Madam Secretary, and this could be happening to you, Madam Secretary. They were like a concierge service, and it's crazy. Oh, by the way, you know about this, although there's some juicy text that I have not seen before between Page and Strzok. They didn't like Bernie Sanders. They didn't like this. They didn't like that. They were just going on and on. Everybody's a D word. Trump is a disaster. I knew they hated him, but they just, were they ever working? Were they ever investigating? They were just texting each other. And it was always how smart they are and how dumb everybody else is, especially MAGA. Anyway, so this report lands yesterday, and the mainstream media, they're not going to explore it fully because it implicates them. And who did they feature? Andrew McCabe, Deputy FBI Director, gets to go on CNN and downplay this report that, if you look closely enough, implicates him. Same goes for Strzok and the rest of them. They go on show after show defending themselves. Isn't that wild? Isn't that totally and completely outrageous? And everyone's moving on, right? Everyone's moving on. I guess, I mean, they all did it, essentially, so therefore nobody did it. And they sabotaged our president, even their president. They sabotaged the first half of his term. You remember this stuff?
The FBI and congressional officials investigating the Trump campaign's potential ties to Russia in exchange for immunity.
Federal investigators explore the potential financial ties of President Trump and associates to Russia.
An opinion piece in the New York Times from the co-founders of Fusion GPS, that's the company behind the dossier detailing.
It was bad enough the first time, and it goes on and on, month after month, year after year, and it's all a fantasy. It's all something really cooked up by Hillary Clinton's people. They duped everybody, although people wanted to be duped.